Okay, deep breath. If you're new here, just know this episode made sense at the time. Somewhere in this episode is a life lesson. I don't know where, but it's in here. Just a heads up, this episode contains poor decisions, holiday resentment, and a skunk who was looking for violence and he found me. I really shouldn't be allowed near people during the holidays and on non-holidays. This episode contains emotional damage, holiday resentment, and a skunk who honestly had better boundaries than most people in my life. And that's not a compliment to either party. Welcome back to No Hard Feelings. Kinda. The podcast where we process trauma, tell questionable stories, and call it healing. Today's episode includes a skunk that violated my peace, part 2, a continuation of my first marriage story that proves you can't apply logic to a person who has none, and Petty Triggers Holiday Edition, because nothing says joy like suppressed rage in a festive font.
Merry Christmas.
Grab a drink, lower your expectations, let's go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So earlier this week, in broad daylight, I'm out in my garage with the door open. I'm sitting there, minding my own business, when I thought I smelled something not so great, but I live in the mountains, so I'm like, nature. A few seconds later, I feel this bump on my leg. It was the exact way my 5-pound chihuahua, Novia, nudges me when she wants to be picked up, except Novia was inside. So I look down and there is this little black furry face bumping my leg on purpose. It keeps walking out from under my chair and I realize it's a huge ass skunk. So I very calmly, by which I mean with absolutely zero chill, take 2 big strategic steps away from it. And it starts coming at me. So I did what anybody would do. I grabbed a broom and I start screaming at it to get out of here. Like it's my husband and I just found a burner phone. And then this skunk grabs the broom with its little creepy fingers and starts fighting it. I am now sparring with this asshole. And the entire time I'm praying. I'm like, please don't spray. Please don't spray. I will literally never ask for anything again. Well, I finally get it out of the garage, but it keeps trying to come back at me aggressively. And I give it one solid heave with the broom, and it starts to walk away. Sort of. And that's when I'm like, something is wrong with this thing. So I call my neighbor, and I'm like, hey, just a heads up. There's a demonic skunk heading towards your house right now. And he looks outside and sees it walking all weird and goes, yeah, that has rabies. So that was my week. I did not have rabid wildlife hand-to-hand combat on my 2025 bingo card. Anyway, Merry Christmas, right? And if you're wondering why I handled the skunk the way I did, perfect timing, because it's time for part 2, the story of my first marriage. Before we get into this story, I want to be really clear about something. What you're about to hear isn't dramatic, exaggerated, or me looking back and rewriting history. This is exactly what my life looked like while I was still living it. If you find yourself thinking, why didn't she just leave? Don't worry, I ask myself that now too. At the time, my brain was doing its best, and unfortunately, its best was terrible. So, this is part 2 of my first marriage story, and this is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. I believe I ended part 1 with Sean telling me that he wanted a divorce and he could do better because I didn't know what I was going to make for dinner that night. Of course, I know that that isn't the real reason or the sole reason, but I can't help but find that funny that that was the moment he chose to have his, big performance of, that's enough! I have had it with this tomfoolery! But after he told me he wanted a divorce, we still lived together for an entire year. Not as a couple, and really not as co-parents who had it figured out, as a separated married couple because he refused to agree to let me move out of state with our son. So we stayed together in the same house. And honestly, it was pretty much business as usual, except now I was no longer required to have sex with him once a month. So there was that. But during that year, he went out every single weekend. Bars, drinking, getting hammered, trying and failing to pick up women. I know that he failed because he would tell me about it the next day while hungover, and he would ask me how he could improve his game. Yes, the audacity was already strong. In fact, the very next day after he had asked me for the divorce, he went out with some friends, and I'll never forget it because it was so funny to me. He spent about 2 or 3 hours getting ready, which I don't know what he had to do for 3 hours to get ready, especially at the time he had a buzz cut. So, I mean, it's not like he was doing his hair. I mean, all he had to do was take a shower and get dressed, but I don't know. I guess he was trying to figure out what to wear. And after all that time, he comes out of the bedroom and I immediately lose it because he is wearing a sweater vest.
He was wearing what?
And I remember I was laughing so hard and I'm like, what are you wearing? And his logic was that he would really attract women to him by giving off the impression or coming across as the kind of guy that you can take home to meet your mother at a bar on a Saturday night. So he goes out and of course he bombs every which way. And after the bars close, he goes back to his friend's house, and there was, I guess a group of them, of their friends that all went to this apartment. And about just 1 block, I believe it was, right down the street from this friend's apartment, there was a convenience store. And so Sean decided that he was going to walk down to this convenience store to get something. I don't know what. Anyway, he walks down there, and he's so drunk that on his way back, he gets lost. It's 1 block away. And he gets lost. And he's walking around for hours trying to find his friend's apartment. When he finally finds it, everybody has gone, and his friend that lives in the apartment is asleep. So, of course, nobody's answering the door. And he's too drunk to drive home, so he had to just sleep in his car until the morning, until he could safely drive home. And I don't know if he thought that I would maybe just assume or think that he went home with some woman and maybe I would be jealous or whatever. I don't know. That definitely didn't happen. I just assumed that he stayed at his friend's house that night, but when he told me that that's what happened, I definitely laughed really, really hard. I couldn't help it. So everything else, in our day to day was really, again, just business as usual. In fact, the monthly performance reviews didn't stop. And one of them was even on my birthday. He actually sat me down and told me very seriously all the ways I was failing as a wife, as a mother, as a human. I mean, imagine being told that you're not meeting expectations while blowing out your birthday candles. Well, eventually, something strange I started happening where there were these moments where I would think that he would, like, if I maybe said something or did something minor that he normally would have flipped out about. And so I would like brace myself, waiting for him to explode, and he wouldn't. But then there were things that no normal person would ever care about. He would absolutely lose it. Like, for example, he told friends of ours, another couple that we were close with, that he makes the coffee every morning. And I laughed because every single night I always preset the coffee maker so that it brews before he even wakes up. And just for that, just for laughing, that earned me 3 days of silent treatment. 3 days for coffee. And then he started to do what I know now is called the flying monkeys theory, where a narcissist will try to then make the people around you or the people that you care the most about think that you are either a horrible person or you're unfit or you're crazy, anything negative about you. And so he would call his aunt in Maryland, who was someone that I loved very deeply and was very close with throughout our entire relationship. And he would tell her how lazy I was. And meanwhile, I'm the one doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the laundry, raising our son day and night, running errands with a baby, managing the house, while he literally played video games all day, drank all the time, and would spend most weekends recovering from hangovers. I watched him pour all the alcohol in the house down the sink more times than I can count, swearing he was done forever. 2 days later, beer in hand. Editor's note from future JoJo here. I want to be clear about something before I continue. I'm not minimizing addiction and I'm not making light of it. Alcoholism is devastating for the person struggling and for the people living alongside it. What I'm sharing here isn't judgment, it's memory. This is what it was like to live with someone that you still care about while inside that pattern. If any of this sounds familiar, whether for you or someone you care about, help exists. In the U.S., the SAMHSA National Helpline is 1-800-662-4357. It's confidential and available 24/7. And if you're outside of the U.S., I'll include international resources in the show description. I talked about this in a previous episode, but it fits here. He once sat me down and said, as your friend and someone who cares about you, and then proceeds to list everything wrong with my body very intentionally highlighting insecurities that he knew about. That should have ended this whole charade right then and there, and it didn't. Because at that point, my brain was still trained to survive, not escape. Eventually, I made what I can only describe as a deal with the devil to get permission to move back up north with our son. I agreed to things that people questioned and don't understand, and I completely understand that they don't understand. Things like $300 a month in child support, and me having to pay him $100 a month for our son's bedroom furniture that I took. I completely understand why people don't get it. But at that moment, I had one goal: get me and my child up north somewhere where we can finally move on. And once we moved, things were good. After some time, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 months being back up north, I started dating, and I dated a couple of men over the following year. Nothing real serious, but healthy. And I made one rule very clear. No matter how awful my ex is, he was still my son's father. So no bad mouthing, especially not in front of my child. And honestly, there were no issues with that at all. About a year after my son and I had moved up north, Sean calls me out of nowhere one morning, and he is thrilled, like voice 3 octaves higher than normal thrilled. And he goes, "I just have to tell you, I got laid." Sir, it is 8:30 a.m. I haven't even finished my coffee yet, but apparently I'm HR for your penis, so okay. But he's on a roll. He starts telling me all about her, how she's amazing, how he's never felt a connection like this before, how he cannot wait to see where this goes, and how they have so much in common. So finally I ask, "Oh wow, how did you two meet?" He says, "Last night." Okay, bold start. At a strip club. Ah, there she is. And she was working there as a stripper. Now listen, no shade to strippers at all. Do you secure the bag? I support women in business. But let's be clear. This woman did not think she had met her soulmate. Of course she talked to him all night. He was slipping ones into her G-string like he was funding a Kickstarter. And of course he felt like they had so much in common. They did have a common interest, his wallet. And somewhere in her head, she was like, okay, I'll go home with this guy. Maybe there's more money in the sequel. There was not. Because shockingly, tragically, he never heard from her again. And I just listened, because sometimes the universe delivers comedy directly to your phone. And then maybe about, I don't know, a couple weeks to a month later, he got a girlfriend who is now his wife, and we'll call her Sarah. And that's when the real problems started. Suddenly, the rules we had agreed on, well, they only applied to me. So she was allowed to scream at my son, curse at him, spank him. And when I confronted Sean, he told me that he handled it, that it wouldn't happen again. And like an idiot, I believed him. Then came the phone call that still makes my stomach drop. Sean calls me one night, and he told me that he was flying our son back to me immediately. He said that he had made a mistake and that his girlfriend wasn't who he thought she was. While Sean was away on a detachment for a few days, he had called to check in. And our son got on the phone with him and told him that Sarah had said she was going to hold his head under the bathwater. Now, while he was telling Sean this, Sarah was trying to grab the phone from him so that he couldn't continue to tell his dad the story. Well, she failed, and he got it out. So when she finally got on the phone with Sean, she admitted it. And her explanation, because he didn't rinse all the soap out of his hair, she told him that she'd make him take baths like a baby and hold his head under the water if she had to. To a 6-year-old, that sounds like drowning.
To a 40-year-old, that sounds like drowning.
She didn't apologize. She doubled down. The next day, I'm preparing for my son to come home early, and Sean calls again to tell me that they talked, he and Sarah had talked, and that it wasn't as bad as he thought it was, and he asked me to trust him. And somehow I did. And I mean, I even spoke to her myself and made it crystal clear that nothing like that ever happens again. So, for years after that, things appeared calm, and our son would go back and forth between my house and his house. And looking back, I know why things seemed to be going smoother. Because I gave Sean everything that he wanted. He claimed our son on taxes every single year. He cut into my parenting time for programs that he chose. He invented breaks I'd never even heard of, like a mysterious early September fall break that just happened to include our son's birthday. But when the roles were reversed, my son had to come back early to readjust. One particular break, it was a winter break, I took our son to the airport. We get there 2 hours early, just like we always did, to, go through the line and check in and go through security and all that. Well, a massive snowstorm had canceled flights all over the Midwest. And the line for the airline was, it was just hours long. And we hadn't hardly even moved. And I realized that he wasn't going to make his flight. So I call Sean and I tell him, this is what's going on. And he flips out, accuses me of doing this on purpose. Yes, because nothing screams fun like spending 2 full days at the airport with a 6-year-old. To this day, he insists I sabotaged it. Because obviously I have the power to summon blizzards on demand. During the next few years, the accusations never stopped. According to him, I was always out drinking, sleeping around, which is interesting because I don't drink, and he knows that. And I didn't even sleep with him for the first 6 months that we dated. But logic was never the point. This was the norm for years. Until one thing happened that changed everything. And I'm going to stop the story right here. Not because it's over, but because this is the point where everything was about to change. In part 3, I'll talk about the moment that finally snapped me out of this. And no, it wasn't therapy, a breakthrough conversation, or me suddenly having boundaries. If this story is resonating with you, make sure you're following or subscribed so you don't miss the next part. So please make sure you join me next week for part 3 to hear how this story ends. You don't want to miss it. And I'll let you know now, it gets worse before it gets better. Alright, it is time for Petty Triggers Holiday Edition.
Christmas is about giving, so here's what I'll do. I'm gonna send you a Christmas text. Christmas text, Christmas text. I'm gonna type Merry Christmas exclamation point and then press send.
Since next week is Christmas, I figured this would be the perfect time for the segment where we acknowledge that peace on earth was clearly a suggestion. This is a judgment-free zone unless you do one of these things. Then I am judging you aggressively. So, rapid fire, let's talk about these things. Christmas music before Thanksgiving. I'm not saying it's illegal, I'm just saying it feels aggressive. Like, I just bought a pumpkin. Relax. Secret Santa with a $20 limit because somehow I spend $38 and end up with a mug that says Boss Babe. Family members who ask, so how's your love life? None of your business. How's your marriage, Deborah? Anyone who brings a surprise +1 to an intimate dinner. That wasn't in the budget or the consent form. Let's go around the table and say what we're grateful for. How about we all say what we're not grateful for instead? That would be way more fun. People who hover in the kitchen doing nothing but judging. Either help or haunt somewhere else. Anyone who comments on how much you're eating. I'm coping, you goblin. Passive-aggressive gift notes, like, thought you might like this. No, you didn't. Family members that say, it's just a joke. Then why do I need therapy? People who insist on group games when everyone is dead inside. Read the room, Jigsaw. Anyone who touches you and says, you look tired. You look fat. I wasn't going to say anything, but since this is what we're doing, stating the obvious, who's next? Relatives who ask why you don't have kids. Maybe Cousin Stacy likes her vagina just the way it is, in one piece. The person who brings politics to dessert. Jail. Straight to jail. People who stay too long because they're comfortable. You have 5 more minutes to get out of my house and then it's trespassing. Group photos while you're mid-bite. Why do you hate me? If this list has offended you, then you need to check your behavior. Alright, my loves, thank you for hanging out with me today. If you're still listening after a skunk story, a marriage deep dive, and holiday pettiness, congratulations. You are emotionally resilient. That's it for today's episode of No Hard Feelings, Kinda. If this episode made you laugh, flinch, or mentally draft a text you'll never send, you're not alone. Make sure you're subscribed because we're not done unpacking anything, and I have more stories than coping skills. I'll see you next time, right here on No Hard Feelings, Kinda. Next week, more healing, same red flags, different decade. JoJo's tips for a somewhat peaceful and enjoyable holiday season. Please don't make passive-aggressive comments in front of company, tip your servers, and stop chewing with your mouth open.